Stuart, welcome to this episode of AWS's Partner Profiles. How are you, my friend?
I'm very well, thank you, Chris, and thank you for having me along on this. Really looking forward to speaking today.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. I'm really looking forward to speaking with you as well. I've had the good fortune and opportunity to work with you and your company now for quite a bit of time. And so I love the fact we're going to be able to dig into who Code Wizards is, what you focus on, your approach to helping game developers really execute and bring their games to the market in the absolute best way possible, not just for themselves, but for their players, right? I always believe that collectively, our real customers are the very end user, the people that actually sit down to play those games, right? And helping game companies to ensure that their games are delivered at scale globally, right? So it's an enjoyable first handshake experience for anybody playing those games is super important. But before we dig into all that, why don't you share with us a little bit about your experience in the games industry? Like, when did you get started, and how did Code Wizards come about?
Okay, so we've been around for 23 years, which is kind of crazy to say that these days. It's quite a long time. We went all the way up from the 8-bit world through the 16-bit, 32, and here we are today. When we started, we were based in England. Originally, I'm from the Midlands, where Ozzy Osbourne is from, and that's where font comes from for the title. It was all around 70s and 80s metal. And these days, we've got 4 studios. We are based in England, just outside of London. So that's our Reading studio. We've got Elgin, which is absolutely beautiful, right at the top of Scotland. We've got New Zealand, which is in Christchurch. And then we recently opened Vancouver in Canada, which is amazing and a lovely place to be. We're a massive fan of being in places where it feels right, as stupid as that may sound from an engineer. The vibe and the feel of a place is really important to the people who work there. And happy people make better games. So it works for us too.
But what is the mission statement that kind of guides the way you help game developers?
Yeah, well, we know that working on games is a blessing and a privilege. It's an art form that we love. Everyone who works here is massively into games, and that helps as well. But we believe in paying it forwards. Our motto is don't be a dick, and we try and live by it as much as we possibly can. And the reason why we love the motto is it's just a simple rule to live by, both internally and externally. It sets the tone. We're working on games with people. Like I said, it's an art form and it's a beautiful thing to work on. So it just sets everything out nicely. So we're doing the exact best that we can do for that person and for that game. And in return, players get a better game. And in return, our guys really enjoy what they're doing and are proud of the work that goes out the door. So it's a win-win-win.
And I love the motto. And yeah, it all boils down simply to, help as many, hurt as few, right? Like just do
100%.
that, right? And that is by and large, right, the games industry. People get into this, companies are formed to build games because people want to tell stories. They want to share experiences and they want to create something that brings people together, right? So your ethos aligns directly with, right, the best that we can be as an industry and as game developers.
Yeah, and it chimes really well with the AWS motto about customer first, because if we're not the right people for a particular game and a so-called competitor is, that's cool. We can introduce the competitor. We don't feel obligated to create fences or walls. We work with our so-called competitors all the time. And what it means is we're sharing expertise. And again, as a collective, we're just enjoying what we do. And again, players get better games. So win-win, win-win-win. I think that makes it.
Exactly. Well, we're going to go ahead and dig into who Code Wizards is, your main technologies and innovations. So why don't we go ahead and jump right over and start talking about who Code Wizards is. So Stuart, why don't you walk us through a bit about what problems does Code Wizards solve or address, and how do you do so?
Okay, so at Code Wizards, we're primarily around the online player services space and game backends, as they used to be called, with LiveOps. So over the years, we've developed a few ways of looking at the world, which is slightly different to everybody else. So as part of the lean forwards methodology, what we really want to do is get involved in that game and what they're trying to build. So After 20 years of speaking to people about games and bringing expertise to the party, we decided to give it a name, and we call it the M.A.G.I.C methodology. That's all around getting into the game, what you're trying to build, how you're trying to build it, and then we can help steer you to the right way to do those things. And so we lean on our partners, AWS, quite heavily with that stuff. For the build element, that's where we're actually creating things. So whether it be a LiveOps or backend or multiplayer, or we're doing netcode with the client, that's all good, and we can do those things, and we have developers around the world to do that, primarily based in our 4 locations. We also do some migration work. We move people into AWS cloud and allow them to get the scale that they need, as well as the security, reliability, and all that good stuff. And then we do analytics as well. And then our latest offering is multiplayer wizards. Over the years, we've built a lot of systems. And when we finish building those systems, most of our studios that we work with have said, hey, that's really cool. Can you support this for us? And we've had to say, we're really sorry, but we can't. That's not what we do. That's not how we know how to do these things. We build things, and then we kind of walk away, and we come back for the next game to work with them, which is great. It always felt like we were doing them a disservice. So what we've done is built a brand new service called Multiplayer Wizards, where we can help them create and launch and run their game so that we don't have to have any stop in service. We know that they can get world-class service from us as well. And it just feels like the right thing to do from a karma perspective as well.
So this basically then creates kind of a one-stop shop for a developer, from figuring out how to architect these pieces, then how to go to bring them into their build environment, and then being able to deploy and operate them, having Code Wizards there as a partner to help them through that entire cycle of initial development, optimization, deployment, and operation, right?
Exactly. And it means that we know a lot of tips and tricks as well. So we can actually help things get to market quicker. We can reduce the risk. We can even implement a feature in a, quote, better way for them as well, which is faster to market or allows them to prove things out. So it really is, again, a win-win.
Yeah. I also love the fact that your terminology and your phrasing all leads into the Code Wizards name, right? So it is the magic of doing this. It is, bringing those pieces together. So I love the fact that there's that magic theme in there. And I mean, look, again, Code Wizards being able to provide that engineering support to create and manage games, online player services. You work with partners like AWS, world-class, right? Scaling tech partners. And the engineers that you have on staff really help to implement and run those LiveOps and game servers. And again, through everything from the beginning development phase all the way through release cycles. You've got white glove support, I understand. And all of this, as you all say, has an added sprinkle of magic and love, right? Magic to get the tech out of the way so you can just focus on making better games and do it for love of video games.
Yeah, and that's why we call our guys wizards. It's a collective. We all work together. We may joke, and it may be a bit cheesy about the level of magic involved in these things, but it really is when people work together as a collective. It's a better way of working. So
no, agreed, right? And I mean, one of the things we've talked about forever in games, is that we have to do some magic to get around limitations of technology, so it appears to be something different for the player, right? We can obfuscate the complexities of technology or limitations of technologies in ways that the player never even sees. It does require, a bit of magic. It is truly a collision of art and computer science, right? These games that are developed and delivered to the world.
It really is. And the less friction that's within a game, the easier to get into, the better the lobbying system works, the easier all those mechanisms are. That takes really hard work to get there. None of this stuff is for free.
Mm-hmm.
Also, legal compliance is increasing across the world as well. You've got GDPR, you've got every other scheme that's out there as well. These things are really important for the safety of players, and individual game teams can't know all these things. It's impossible. So that's where we fit, and that's where we can help.
Well, one of the things I've heard you speak about before, right, is that Code Wizards is truly a lean forward organization. Can you talk a bit about that and the concept of a lean forward organization?
Okay, so we call ourselves lean forwards because we're really interested in the games that we're building. Not every time will it be the kind of game that you really enjoy, but you will find that the game team that you're working with, you'll really enjoy that team. Games teams are amazing. They're full of passion. They want to build the best possible version of a product that they can. And that lean forward just allows us to really work on the game and work on it hard. So for example, the better a game is, the more stuff that's left on the cutting room floor. You know, it's an old adage, it's still very true. No game is created from a game design document and then suddenly vaulted out into the real atmosphere. That's just not a thing. So what is really important is that you work together as a collective with the client, because that client is going to have to cut features, and some of those features will be yours, or some of those features will have to change, or some of those features will be resurrected at various points as we go through these things.
Right.
Unless you're a lean forward organization, you're always working essentially off a statement of work. And what that means is that once you've done your work, you walk away and you're not happy to change things and you're not happy to collaborate, and it's not a better product. And virtually every time in life, collaboration makes a better game or a better media or a better piece of artwork, except when Metallica have occasionally done it with Lou Reed.
And look, and that's important, right? Because sometimes when you're too close to a problem that you're trying to solve, you kind of get tunnel vision, you kind of get groupthink, right? So being that extra, set of participants allows a developer to hear other opinions that are experienced and seasoned and based on what we've seen in the industry to help make the game better, the services better, the product better. And I have this conversation all the time with game developers, which sometimes when they hit that crossroad, they're like, well, this is what I want. It's like, well, is it what your audience wants or is it what you want, right? And art is wonderful in that we can create things just for ourselves and build it for an audience of one. But if you're also building art to hit a massive audience and to go in and keep your game company afloat so you can continue to create more art and tell more stories out there, it's important to have that balance. And that is what CodeWiz excels at doing, is helping to figure out how to smooth out those rough edges to make sure what is delivered is, operates excellently, operates at scale, operates with the right technology, operates correctly for the people who play those games.
Absolutely. And that external view also extends for people who are my age and that kind of age as well. So we've grown up in this industry and we've learned certain rules about what can happen and what can't. So for example, if I float back 15 years and I wanted a backend to support 1 million concurrent players, it had to be bespoke. There was just nothing there that could do these things. It's really hard to do, technically very difficult and very difficult to load test it as well. If we fast forward to today off that same lesson, and some studios still are in this mindset, which is that we need to build our own backend to do these things because it's so special. The truth is these days, there's a lot of off the shelf that can be used and customized and enhanced. And that'll get you maybe 50, 60% of the way, which is a lot of time and effort and risk taken out of the game. And it means you can iterate harder.
Right.
Another example is externalized config. When I started, you built all the configuration into a game. So when you were building and testing and trialing a game, you couldn't modify gravity or how stickiness you are to a wall or a million other parameters within the game. These days we externalize that config so you can do that, and it just allows faster iteration cycles, which again leads to a better game because you can get more play cycles, you can test more things out, you can A/B test it. All these things weren't really available or were massively bespoke and massively expensive in the past, and now are much more like commodity and easy to build in. So having that external viewpoint is really useful to just remind you that these things are there and that they can do this these days, and you should probably think about things twice before you commit.
All right, Stuart, I love the ethos that Code Wizards, leads their work by. I love that top-down approach to just helping developers and make sure we get great games out there in the world. But you have a specific methodology that Code Wizards follows in basically every engagement that you have. Can you walk our audience through what this magic methodology is?
Okay. Well, magic methodology really is our mechanism for speaking to clients and trying to elucidate what the actual core game is and where you want to go with it. So every game is different, often massively different. There's commonalities, obviously, within these things, but each art form is a different expression of how you want to do it, how you see the world, how players will see the world, and how they'll interact. We found that we were asking the same questions. When we work with a brand new game, one of the really nice things is that we sit down with our leadership and we just work our way through what is it you want to achieve? Where do you see this game in a few years? How would you like players to respond to this? And what kind of features do you need to do this? So the magic methodology is our way of getting all those questions out there in an open, friendly way. It's always great because when you put a bunch of people in a room and everyone's always agreed these things, we ask a bunch of independent questions around the game. And we ask a lot of devil's advocate questions as well around, just to, again, push through this and get people thinking through what they actually want. And what that does is it allows the whole team to come together and really dive into some of the details that they haven't thought of before. It also allows them to think about which features they can cut early on and add in later, and which bits need to be put in immediately to make it easier and faster to work. So, for example, with LiveOps platforms, we like to put in online player services as quick as we can, even before Greybox. The reason, it allows us to externalize config, it allows you to play around with currencies, it allows you to play around with a bunch of stuff within the game without having to pay for those things now. They may not end up being the end result of what you want to do and how you would implement it. However, it allows you to iterate fast and play the game and really get an idea of what the core kernel of this game needs to be before you commit. The second thing it allows you to do is to understand the real costs and how this business is going to run, because games really are a business. A game which isn't run with a profit center is a hobby. And unfortunately, hobbies are very expensive and don't particularly go well. So
They're lots of fun, but they are hobbies for sure.
they are, yeah. So, for example, we find that a lot of people haven't really thought about how they're going to host this thing, or they've just said this will be great as peer-to-peer for a multiplayer game without thinking why it's great, or vice versa. We're going to use dedicated servers for a small indie game. They haven't thought about how they can monetize elements within this. And they also don't know just how much it costs to run a backend or to manage it or to support these things in the field or to handle customer support, because customers are going to buy things off you. And of course, they want to get those items. And if they're not the right items, they want to work with you to make sure that it's all appeased. So there's a lot of things that we work our way through. And really, we break it down into the initial workshop, and then we do a write-up based upon what's in there. And we build the architecture for this. So the framework of how the game works, how you could iterate, how you could deliver in phases and costs. And then afterwards, we work with you on the game to start cutting it apart, doing the development, building out the features that you need now and not the features that you need tomorrow. So you can phase this project and work at the timescale that you need to.
So, one of the things that is really that you bring up that I find really important to highlight is the way we have traditionally approached the mechanics of operating games at scale as an industry. And a lot of times, especially in smaller teams, they have a certain amount of budget. They've got to get a vertical slice done. They're looking for their next money in. They need to get in front of publishers, all of these sorts of things. And it's always, oh, well, Online, I don't know what that's all going to be, so I'm just going to push that to this side. Multiplayer, we have some ideas, but that's not our expertise. We're going to push that to the side because we need to go ahead and make sure that we sell the game on its content, on its lore, on its art, on its approach, these sorts of things. And what winds up typically happening is we go forward and we build those things as best we can, and then at some point, the developer may say, okay, now it's time to implement these things, but I don't know where I'm going to insert it because now I've got this kind of Gordian knot of technology and stuff that I band-aided together to get to where I am. And it always goes, right, with the best of intentions that we'll go back and we'll fix this thing after we get that next phase of funding or we hit those next milestones. We never go back and refix those things, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just working, so let's just keep going. So I think, you know, really important because we live in a massively connected world across more devices than at any other point in history. Even if you don't believe that there's these online services that you may need, you need to at least allow the gap to include those down the road. So having a good, solid foundation of how to integrate those technologies from the beginning is super important. But let's face it, a lot of game developers, right? Or I should say the vast majority of game developers they decided to become game developers and not cloud practitioners, right? They decided to go ahead and tell these stories and not learn kind of, you know, the machinery underneath that actually requires you to deliver these things. This is where exceptionally talented and skilled partners like Code Wizards can come in and help them from the very beginning, right? The first part of your magic workshop of that one-day discovery, right, allows you to go and set the stage for the importance of including those options at the very beginning of your development cycle, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned investment and milestones there, because what we're increasingly seeing with investment is that games publishers want to see a fully furnished plan. They want to understand what that cost looks like, how you're going to build it. And this is where the rise of the service providers, us included, is really gaining, you know, even more paces, because publishers want certainty on the money that they're spending for the game. And the way that that manifests is that they need to know that skilled partners are going to be brought in to do specific artwork or trailers or previs or scaling. All these things now service providers are providing, so the game team can just concentrate on making the best possible game that they can envision.
Yeah.
And that's really cool.
It is. Yeah. And look, I think, you know, de-risking those elements of game development is exceptionally important, right? And especially in highly technical and complex areas, right? So by removing some of that heavy lifting or giving them a strong foundation upon which to build, it really enables game teams to concentrate, you know, hard on really what's important, which is making the game and make it amazing for players.
Absolutely. I mean, an interesting use case that we find with console teams that have been working for a long time together, they don't really think of it as an online game, but virtually everything these days is an online game. So analytics is a great example where the mobile space absolutely nails this. They store everything, they track everything, they look through the data in real time and batch, and they work hard on that to look at it. What we found over the last few years is we're increasingly doing this for AA and AAA games across console and PC, where even if it's a single player game, I am really interested in what's happening to those players and how they're playing my game.
Right.
Not just for monetization for creating a DLC, but so I can fix issues with player experience. If lots of people are having a problem on a certain level doing something, as a game developer, I want to fix that. I want you to play my game. That's why I built the game. And so that's what data analytics allows you to do. And these days, it's not particularly complex to do. So it's one of the things that I love fitting into these workshops. It's just a great little snippet of information that you can give people that they can either action themselves or get somebody to implement, or, you know, God forbid, bring Code Wizards in to do. But in that way, they get the value and the players get the value. And that makes me happy.
And look, you hit such an amazing point here, right? That Information, right, or data is not the same thing really as information, or one of those ways, right? Like you could collect a whole bunch of telemetry data and everything, but if you can't discern why that data is there, what the story is behind that data. And that could be player frustration. It could be particular approaches to a problem that lean one direction they may not have thought of before. Being able to pull all of that data in and understand how to smooth that gameplay experience for the players experiencing this over time is how you continue to keep people invested in your content. It keeps coming back to the game. When they get these incremental improvements they didn't even ask for, they just kind of magically appear, right, is amazing. And you're right, the mobile game industry knew this a long time ago, literally like, a decade and a half, almost 2 decades ago. And I remember, in the rise of feature phones and Java games and these sorts of things, that's one of the things that my team in my former company would take a look at, is how you provide those services so a game developer can understand, yeah, there is a real problem with the algorithm driving a particular gameplay piece or a particular level design problem. Let's fix it and push. And then millions of people have that experience smoothed for them instantly. And it just seems that now that every game has some online component, the opportunity to do that for every type of game on every platform is here and now.
Yeah. And it's not just changes to the game, it's changes to player behavior and other outside factors. So
yeah,
these days we have to security patch things. That wasn't a thing when I first started, but that security patch could be impacting to your game. It could be a change to firmware on a certain kind of device. It could be a graphics chip update. Having that information so you can see how things are changing over time is really useful. So yeah, I love to put the data in, and I love showing people actionable insights that you can just get little, useful nuggets of data out of there that make things better. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. All right. So that's the M.A.G.I.C methodology, right? And it covers everything from initial discovery to designing, developing, managing all aspects of backend, online multiplayer services for everything, right? From single player to live service games, migrations. How do we move a game's online elements from one solution to another? The data analytics pipelines and how you can utilize those. Integration of different technologies at different points in the development timeline, all the way to the DevOps and LiveOps as a service. CodeWizards does it all. It can help your company actually kind of weather that storm, build on a solid foundation from the beginning, and scale to meet demand when your game becomes an absolute breakaway hit. Love the M.A.G.I.C methodology.
Awesome. I couldn't have put it better myself, Chris.
All right, so first up is build. So explain to us the build process that CodeWizards takes their customers through.
Okay, so we primarily have 3 pillars that we work with in build. So game tech is a huge chunk of what we do. So online player services are a big piece, which are LiveOps platforms. We do backend services as well for multiplayer. We do netcode. And we also build a lot of SDKs for various people out there as well to integrate one solution into game engines, which is a very particular need. For migration, we find a lot of this. There's a lot of games that are out there and either have a bespoke backend solution, or they may be scaling using bare metal and they want to move into AWS to get all the benefits of the AWS cloud. So we work with AWS and we're a migration services competency, which is quite a mouthful to say out loud for somebody like me. But what that means
for
is
anyone.
yeah, but what it means is we have access to the awesome AWS guys who do this day in, day out and know exactly how to do this. It allows us to then move a game onto AWS and get all the benefits for it without incurring too much trouble for the game team themselves alongside. And then the last part of what we do is data analytics, which I think speaks for itself. Whether it's batch or it's online, building those pipelines, getting that data in there, making it actionable, making it insightful, making it usable for those game teams is really important. And we can do the integration for them. We can do the back-end tooling, and we can even build custom screens and dashboards if that's what the team needs alongside as well.
Great. So starting right from the beginning, that discovery phase, then it's the design and development of the needed services at that point in time that can grow over time, and kind of building the roadmap for that. How to go ahead and migrate onto common platforms, and then how to go ahead and prepare for the ingest of that data and the data analytics that would then follow.
100%. Yeah, the architecture is really important to get right for these things.
Yeah.
If you get the architecture correctly, everything else will fall into line. So for the
Well,
game tech,
you just described game development, right? Like, right? And it has always been, yeah, let's just go get it done. But when you're talking about deploying enterprise, it's really an enterprise grade and enterprise scale application, right? You
yeah,
can't just kind of, well, we'll shoehorn stuff in and we'll just kind of figure it out as we go. Having that solid foundation from the beginning will pay so many dividends down the road without having to go back and re-architect because, right, the wrong foundation. You were building that house on the wrong foundation to begin with, right?
a great example of building things on a firm set of sand is that we build architecture so it can scale. We have clients who've come to us over the years with various issues. They may have built a back end or used a back end which wasn't perfect for them. And what that's meant is that they've had to shard players across them. You've
Yes.
then got an issue where these players want to share information or they want to friend each other, but now they're in completely different silos because that's the way that the game runs.
Right.
We've also seen lots of problems where the price of these things goes up exponentially because there was no architecture done at the start. There was no load testing. There was no soak testing. And worst of all, we see it a lot of times where teams have implemented things and the game just isn't reliable. So to have a game which is a live service game based on monetizing microtransactions, which isn't reliable, is completely untenable.
Right.
Players won't get a good experience. The players won't buy the items in game. So you just can't do it. And to retrofit those things can be very, very, very difficult, if not nigh on impossible.
Yeah,
And the irony is, a very simple amount of architecture and pre-work can offset a lot of that pain and angst.
Yeah. No, and look, I remember having a conversation with an industry colleague who was, building the very first MMO games, and this person actually commented to me, "Well, the reason we keep sharding stuff is because that's how we knew how to do it. So we just keep replicating the same bad decisions, or not bad decisions, the uninformed decisions that were made at the beginning of this, right?" And to
Yeah.
your point, then yeah, let's just go ahead and continue building that, because even if it's not optimal, we know how this works. The problem is that with the virality that games have now and the ability to reach across literally hundreds of millions of devices, right? You have to be ready for when your game becomes a smash success and you didn't expect this type of ramp. How do you scale? How do you grow, right? So, Stuart, we're talking about these backend services. Can you walk our viewers through some of those online player services that they should be taking a look at and that Code Wizards can assist with?
Yeah. So what we've been trying to do really is establish a lexicon about how we can talk about these things. So the games business has been talking about LiveOps, and it talks about backends, and it talks about game servers. And it's become really difficult to work out exactly what it is that one is talking about. So for online player services, we're talking about systems that provide this, like Nakama or Pragma, even PlayFab from Microsoft. And what these things are doing is giving you a standard set of services that are extensible and can be used for basic analytics or leaderboards or currencies and economies and entitlements and purchasing things, and also remote config. There's a lot of tools on the market now that can do these things for you, so you don't have to bespoke it. And also when it comes to scaling services, GameLift is a fantastic example of an amazing game scaling service. It has an orchestrator. It manages the service for you, both scale up and, more importantly, scale down, which is where you get your economies from. It also has a matchmaker within there and lobby systems. All of these things are really important to modern games, and getting the right base that you can work upon just makes your life a lot simpler as a game developer.
Yeah, and when we think about some of these services, right? We think about them, or tend to talk about them sometimes as undifferentiated services, right? It's the things that are important to your game, but aren't necessarily going to be the thing that keeps the player in through the magic of, wow, this leaderboard looks really different than these 15 other leaderboards that I have, right? And it's one thing that the mobile industry and the web industry just kind of figured out, which is nobody builds an app server anymore. Nobody builds a web server anymore, right? Like, that's settled tech. You make improvements on it if that's really where your area of expertise is, but people deploying to those platforms don't necessarily build those things. So from a game developer's perspective, it's about thinking about what you really need to be focused on to make your game stand out in this massively competitive space. And again, that isn't necessarily going to be that your leaderboard is 10% better than other leaderboards out there, right? So figure out what those standardized technologies are, those undifferentiated pieces of the technology that are critically important, but aren't necessarily the things that are going to keep your player hooked. It's how you use those pieces of technology that will keep your player hooked, right?
Precisely. And the differentiation is really in the products that are in the market. So
that's right.
Some products will very easily handle thousands of items of apparel that customers can have within their wallet, within their wardrobe that they can use. Other ones may be poorly optimized for that. Other games may have brilliant economy, so they can handle multiple currencies and fluctuations between them, modeling between one to the other and tracking those things, and others don't. So it's really important to know which tool you're using and what it gives you. But largely constructing these things from scratch, I agree 100%, is largely futile. Extend as much as you can.
Yeah. Lean into your expertise, right? And build that art, build that amazing game. All right.
100%.
So yeah, a great overview of the online player services that a game developer may need to familiarize themselves with and give consideration to as they're building their game. All right, Stuart, a fantastic overview of the type of online player services that a game developer needs to consider as they're building their game, and CodeWizards can help them with those decisions. Now, can you talk a bit about how CodeWizards helps developers to run those games? All right, Stuart. So let's talk about how CodeWizards help game developers understand how to most effectively run their games for online audiences.
So for years, we didn't have this service. Multiplayer Wizards wasn't a thing. It came out of the fact that we wanted to support games through their entire life cycle. And so with Multiplayer Wizards, we assembled a bunch of veterans from across the business, brought them in to work with us, and we've just had the most fun building a brand new business called Multiplayer Wizards and working with everyone else out there. What we found is that there's three real pillars in this area that work for us. So for a lot of games that are already in play, they may have been in building for 3, 4, 5, 10 years in some cases. Things have changed since they originally started, and some of their preconceptions may have changed. So we offer a pre-launch service that we call Scout. And what Scout allows you to do is talk to us about your game, share your game binaries with us, tell us what it is you want to do and what your scaling looks like. And we can go through and we can optimize your game. So we can work out which CPUs or vCPU types work best for you, what kind of memory allocation, how many games we can stack vertically on this, how network will affect things, how many locations you should be in around the world, what to do with your beaconing to work out where to place players as part of your matchmaking. And we put all that together and we can run alongside you and do multiple of these as the game evolves and changes. And what that means is that we can help save you money as you go through. So, for example, if you have a major game and you spend $10,000 a day on servers, it'd be a great problem to have, right? However, if we can make you 10% more efficient, we can save you $1,000 a day, which is a crazy amount of money just off optimizing your game. So the Scout solution, a lot of studios really like because you can get that value back pretty quick.
Right.
When it comes to launches, it's always difficult on a game. Nobody knows what players will actually do. Nobody knows who will post what on Reddit. Nobody knows which Twitch streams are going to be playing and who's going to be there streaming your game. So it's really important that you have people who can watch it. Your team are probably awake for 24 hours, 28 hours, 30, 48 hours, 96 hours, whatever it may be, but they're not going to be at
Gamers.
their best. Yeah, exactly. But everyone wants to see the excitement of their baby being launched into the world, which is amazing.
Yeah.
What we do alongside is something we call War Room. And for the War Room, we provide people who will be there 24 hours a day for the first week or so of your launch. Any issues we've noticed probably before you have, any issues with, say, PlayStation Network or Xbox Live or Steam, we're already on top of, and we can handle those things so you can get back to your players and handle the community. And if things go crazy big, we're there as well to kind of lean into it and again help with that and make sure you're supplying your players with the best experience you can. And when it comes to post-launch, we've built a 24/7, 365 service. And what that really means is we have game analysts running all day, every day of the year. They're proactively looking at your game, how things are going, how is the gaming networks going on, what's the prevailing internet look like. And we really break it into 3 levels of service. We have Watchtower, which is the way that we look at your game and we do basic support and we handle things. And when there's issues, we deal with them for you and then hand off to your team, all the way up to what we call our Fortress, which is where we have dedicated people working on your game, pre-optimizing, pre-changing things, looking at future builds of your game, working with your development pipeline, deploying QA versions of this and revalidating, reprofiling it, and just everything that you need to do where you frankly just don't have the capacity to do this while you're building your game out. We brought in some amazing people like Tom Penrose and Kurt Anderson there to run these things. They're veterans of doing this. They've spent 20 years managing some of the biggest games across the planet. And every day, it's a blessing to see them coming in, smiling, ready for the next game that we're working on. It's just been great.
Yeah, one of the things that you hit on here that I think, again, bears repeating, from the pre-launch phase forward, as you mentioned, what happens if you're able to find an extra $1,000 a day in efficiencies, right, in what you're doing? That's an extra $1,000 you can be putting into more art, right? More employees, more features, more story, right?
Yeah.
And accelerate that time to market for you, right? To accelerate that time to the next investment or the next set of milestones that you have to make, right? So when we think about the cost saving, it's not just saving that money that goes in your pocket. That is our resources that again helps to, in essence, elongate your timeline by giving you more flexibility to just add more to the game, make it more compelling for players. And so, again, uncovering those things early on creates a discipline that allows you to build upon that through the entire development, deployment, and operational phases of your game and market.
Yeah, and that's one of the really great things we've done with Scout, with Graviton. The Graviton capacity, you can look at it from an economic basis, but we always look at it, what else could we do with this? If you could add 1 extra player to a match, would that materially make the game better? If you could increase the clock speed of the game, would that help things? What other things can you do with that extra capacity that you're getting out of it?
Right.
And it's just about thinking differently, really, and just challenging everything that's out there and working with the game team to find an awesome solution.
All right, Stuart, excellent explanations with regard to how Code Wizards can help developers to build and run their games. But talk to us a bit about the other companies that you work with, the technologies that they provide that you also rely on in partnering with them to help bring these games to market.
Firstly, Chris, I have to say we love partnering with people. It's a great way to work. You always gain something from it. You get to work with some exceptional people as well, and you just learn things as you go through. So again, it's just an amazing thing. So we're lucky enough to be an AWS Advanced tier partner. What that means is that we can work really closely with you guys, and we've got access to the service teams as well, which makes life a lot easier for us and for our customers as well, because we can go direct to the engineers that are there. But as well as having a great relationship with you guys, we also work really closely with the Heroic Labs people on Nakama and Satori and Hero, which we love as a toolkit. It's one of our go-to toolkits. It's brilliant. The guys at Axelbyte, we work with very heavily on a bunch of games, and ditto with Pragma. Zola are one of our key partners at the moment, not just their payment provider, but their purchase of Accelerator XR is a great backend as well for certain games that need it. Epic Online Services, Epic Account Services, and as anyone who's ever seen my profile on LinkedIn knows, I absolutely love Kids Web Services. I think it's a great service, and it's amazing for parents, and it's great for keeping children safe. I absolutely love it. I've got loads of time and love for those guys.
Yeah, same.
Loot Locker, they're a great bunch, and they're emerging into the market, and Loot Locker just gets better by the day. Unity Gaming Services are great. You've got all the heritage of Chili Connect that was formed into what they did, and they've just expanded from there now. Brain Cloud are great guys as well, and their services working really well. And then Rally Hero there as well, the high-res guys using their backend that they use for their own games out there in the market for others. So we're exceptionally lucky. There's a lot of players out there that we work with on a regular basis, and it keeps things fresh. And the nicest thing is they all see themselves as part of an ecosystem. They don't badmouth each other. They don't, naturally compete. They're quite happy to provide the right solution to the right game because they're in it for the long term.
Yeah. And I love that you bring up the fact that, they all know each other and everybody works together. Nobody badmouths each other. The industry, for as big as we are, is still a very small industry. So I'm going through, as you're talking about all these companies, I'm thinking about all the people that I've worked with or that I've known over the years that have not only been at one company, but may have moved to those other adjacent companies, right? And we stay in this space because we want to see more, better, bigger games produced, faster, meet bigger audiences. And so it kind of keeps us in there. But what's really important is the reputation that Code Wizards has built has allowed you to go ahead and create these wonderful partnerships and working arrangements with these companies. And so a game developer that works with Code Wizards is also gaining the expertise of using those other suite of tools from a wide variety of partners. So rather than having to become experts in each of those, you're able to bring and recommend these solutions and technologies that will best serve customers' needs. So they don't need to become experts in there. They rely on you to be experts, correct?
That's absolutely correct. And the other advantage is that we directly inform the roadmap of the other partners that we work with. So if there are things on a secret roadmap that we know about is going to emerge in 6 months, if your game really needs it, we can have a sensible conversation about, can we bring that feature in early? Could we run this as an alpha and get you going? And, we know that you're not going to launch for a year, so why not do this in 6 months and it'll all be great? But the other side of being a partner is it's part of our karma mentality, but you've got to give back. So with all these guys, we feed back into their development cycles and into their product cycles as well to say, we're seeing this a lot in the industry. We'd love to see you guys doing this as well. We think this would make you a better product. We also make changes to code and we'll push it back to them as well. We keep on top of the industry and where things are. And then we run experiments during the year against all these as well to just check that they are where they should be, they're as efficient as they could be, and basically that we've got the right partner set. So when we recommend it to a game, we can hand on heart say, we know this is the best solution for you to use. This is what we would do if this was our own game. And awesome. That's got a huge amount of value that's out there in such a small industry where everyone knows each other.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I know you have a couple of examples of how you work with some of these partners. Why don't we go ahead and jump into the first one? Okay, so let's start with Heroic Labs.
Okay, so Heroic Labs, they're a key partner for us. We absolutely love these guys. We have a brilliant deal with them, which is that their product needs to get better. So they need to spend more time on their product. So it just gets better and better and better all the time. And when they can't spend time doing that is when they're doing services and helping clients out. And it just so happens we do services and we're awesome at doing services. So why don't you guys do the product and make it more awesome, and we'll do the services and we'll do the same and make it easier for you. And in that way, it's been a brilliant partnership. And one of the things that has been most fun about the partnership over the last few years has been really showing just what the product can do and how Nakama in particular can scale. So to prove this, because we speak to a lot of clients through M.A.G.I.C methodology, and we speak at events and we talk to people generally, we're always saying Nakama can scale to crazy heights, but we hadn't got the proof. So we approached Nakama with a crazy idea, which is, why don't we scale to 2 million concurrent users? And them being the guys that they are, the only answer is, yeah, it's cool. What do you need from us to do that? And the answer is, please don't look at this as a DDoS attack when we hit heroic cloud that's running on within AWS. So a lot of partnerships, I realized, may have found it a bit difficult that we were going to do this, but they've just leaned into it and loved it. So we created a framework. We built it out within AWS. We emulated players, and we basically hit it really, really hard. And the end result was that we showed 2 million concurrent players through our frameworks in 3 different ways. As far as I know, that's an industry first for performance benchmarking, anything of this sort. Heroic are really happy with the results. I think they would have liked me to push it a bit farther when we realized that it was actually scaling and it was still going. But, we all agreed 2 million, so 2 million was a good number. And what it's really done across the industry is opened up the conversation. A lot of teams who would be looking at proprietary tech to do this have now come along to have a conversation about, could we build this with Nakama? What would we need to extend or change to do these things? And the advantage of having a toolkit which just works from day one is immense. You could do this with HTTP endpoints, and you could get a kind of one-way conversation with occasional polling, and that's great. But WebSockets are based within Nakama, so we can do that. We can have this duplex comms. So a load of the things that are really intricate links between front end and back end that you can do within mobile, we're now doing within AA and AAA games, which is really exciting to see. So I think there's a lot of future in Nakama. We're going to push it even harder. We've got a couple of really big games coming out on it. And all I can say is I love those guys and I love their tech. So
yeah, and we also love Heroic Labs. I actually interviewed them on a previous episode of the AWS Partner Profiles there, and so we had a chance to dig in. And what I love is, the way Chris and Mo lead that company, the way you lead yours, right? Seems like such a natural fit. And truly wonderful technology that can reach those scaling heights, right? 2 million players, right, into a single space is just massive. And so as we think about the progression of these technologies and, banging on that stuff to make it better and to grow it, it's just going to open up different types of game design, different types of gameplay possibilities across, again, so many more devices than ever before. So awesome that you've already done the work. Game developers, you don't need to do it because Stuart and Chris, right, have been doing that work, right? And that's part of the answer here, right? It's already been done for you.
100%. If you've got battle hardened toolkits that you can use them. They're out there. Go for it. Take a look. And if you want to understand a bit more about how this works, please get in contact. We're always happy to talk Nakama, Heroic Labs, and everything around that family too.
Awesome. Okay, example number 2, Omida Studios. Walk us through this example.
Okay, I really love this example because the game has just been made by people who have such a passion for it, and they're just such a good team. So they had a game that was in the market and they'd launched, and they wanted to be able to scale to the numbers that the game deserved. So what we did is we helped them move onto AWS GameLift. As I've mentioned before, AWS GameLift is a tech that I absolutely love. It just works. It just works out the tin. It's just awesome. So we worked with the Omida team to move them from their proprietary setup into AWS GameLift. And we did this within 5 months with 0 downtime. Now, that may not seem like a short duration, but to move a game that's already running without interrupting their player base, with zero downtime and zero impact to the economics of the game, is actually quite a feat. And the second thing that we were able to do is work with the lovely guys at Pragma on this as well. So Pragma are providing the back-end solution to this to provide loads of the LiveOps functionality. And so our integration between Pragma and GameLift allowed them to bring players in, match make, scale up and scale down. And then lastly, the other part of this that we love doing is load and soak testing. We want to load test things because we want to prove that scale works. Now, we don't need to load test GameLift. We know it works. We know it scales like crazy. We've been there. We've got those scars. It does it. We know that Pragma scales. Those guys have done a bunch of Pragma load testing to validate that the solution's a good one. But what we weren't able to easily understand is, what is the relationship between those two things? What happens if we get a batch of matchmaking and we need to insert a lot of players? What about if we need to do backfilling of those players in there? So that's where load testing and soak testing are really important, because with the soak test, we're looking for reliability. Does it continually work? Does it work when the lights are out? Does it work at 2 a.m. on a Saturday morning when nobody wants to answer a call that something's gone wrong? That's when the soak testing is really important. And it is just lovely to see the Media Studios guys get predecessor out into the market, up and running, and get really nice reviews for it as well, because they're just such a bunch of great guys.
And look, you mentioned, again, another really important point that needs to be stated again. Migrating a live game that's already operating and generating revenue to a more efficient platform, to a more hardened platform, more scalable platform, right, can be incredibly frightening, right, for a developer, especially if they said, well, it's not, we have a service cost that we're already absorbing. We have, extra infrastructure cost that we're already absorbing. So they're kind of built into our economics here. So even if we can get, more money and, less uncertainty and more stability and more growth, that becomes a really difficult place to play, right? Because then it's like, well, we're already kind of doing okay, even if we could do this much better. That becomes a difficult proposition for a lot of developers to consider, which again goes back to why understanding which technologies, solutions, and services at the beginning of development that you can rely upon to reach that scale once your game becomes a breakout one is super important. And if that hasn't happened, leaning on experts like code wizards to help you navigate those things, to minimize risk, maximize profit, maximize experience for the players is so vitally important. So again, the work that you're doing right now not only helps developers to generate more revenue, to go ahead and be able to build more experiences going forward, but also lends itself to a better gameplay experience for the player as well. Right? Both sides win. Or as you said before, win, 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 right?
100%. Yeah.
So, Stuart, you've mentioned a particular AWS service multiple times during our conversation today, specifically GameLift. So, can you talk a bit about how Code Wizards kind of relies on GameLift, what it is, how you've used it, and where you've seen its impact?
Okay, we love GameLift. It's an awesome technology. It's a very focused game-specific scaling technology for scaling up and scaling down of game servers. So what that really means is that it handles the orchestration of the servers behind the scenes. And the reason why we love it is we have an amazing relationship with the engineering team that you guys have got over in Seattle. And what that manifests as is that we have a better together way of working. So you guys provide absolute world leading, world conquering orchestration and scaling. You provide the support behind it, which means that you have engineers in every location all the time. You have all these amazing locations around the world where you host these things. And then you've got a tech team that's constantly pushing out new features. And what we provide is that white glove personal service on top of your toolkit. And what that means is for a lot of studios, they get something which is better than either of us working alone. So they get all the advantages of like a super high-tech solution that works. And they also get a bunch of veterans who've been through this, have been through 20, 30. I mean, one of the guys, 100 game launches over the years. And we can provide that real white glove service, which is focused to the game that's involved. And it's just awesome working together.
Yeah, and it really is a case of better together. And we absolutely enjoy working with you and the incredible team over there at Code Wizards as well.
Yeah.
So, Stuart, amazing. Thank you for walking us through kind of the methodology that Code Wizards implements, the partners that you work with, examples of how you've worked with these partners. But now let's talk about, who should be looking at Code Wizards offerings, right? So if I'm a small game developer just getting started, or a large publisher, like, what's the right size company or developer to come and start talking to Code Wizards?
Okay, so we work with everybody, Chris, from small to the largest AAA, to the biggest publishers on the planet. And that variation is a blessing and a pleasure to work across, because it gives us the whole gamut of everything across the ecosystem. And we also work across every device as well. So from mobile, we've got VR titles, PC, console, all of those things. Again, just having that experience and that breadth is just great for the engineers here, as well as for the people we work with. But the best way to engage with us is early on. Magic methodology projects tend to be a lot easier for the game to get moving. They tend to make it easier for the game to get funding as well, because they've got those things broken down, and they can monetize and value that money. But we work with everyone at every stage. We've had games that have been live in the market for 5 years as a live service game and want to migrate into AWS's tech. We've got games that are 2 months away from launch and have finally realized that it's going to go live, and the numbers have gone really big on Steam pre-list. So with those guys, we can provide war rooms. So the honest answer is that the ideal is as early as possible, but in truth, we work with everyone across every bit of their life cycle.
I love that too. So it's not about the size of the developer. It really is, if you're looking to make a great game to get out there in the world, talk to the wizards over there at Code Wizards. And, when we kicked off this episode, we were talking about the fact that, Code Wizards really is a karma-focused company, right? And one of the things that you offer that I think is just absolutely brilliant, and that every developer, I think, should be taking advantage of, is this karma offer that you have for your magic methodology sessions. Can you tell us a bit about what this karma offer is for this, again, magic methodology session?
Yeah, well, I mentioned that we really like win-win-win solutions. They just work for everybody, and we love to pay it forward. So the Karma Magic methodology offer was built because we wanted to give something back. So we work with a lot of game studios, and it's great to get out there. And those workshops are quite expensive because we're bringing in some architects and we're bringing in senior people from our side, etc. However, we always try and look at the world differently as much as we possibly can. So we wanted to find a way of game studios engaging with us and making it really easy to do so, of us leaning in and helping more games and having a wider variety of games that we work in, and also to try and help other people that are out there. So the Karma mission was really, how can we put this together so that we can help charities as well? So what we do is really simple. We work with the studio, we give $20,000 worth of workshop to them for a magic methodology. And all we ask in return is that you give $1,000 to a charity of your choice. And then you give us $1,000 and we donate it to a charity of our choice. So everybody wins. And the sweetest thing about it is that we've been able to help breast cancer charities, Special Effects, who, again, everyone who knows me, I'm a massive champion for and love, Games Fund. We just try and spread this love out as much as we can. And it's a really sweet thing to do, not just for the clients who can see their money going to something really awesome that they care about and we do as well, but also for the staff involved here, all the wizards love to see that we're giving money to a charity, and that's going to have a real net effect. So it may make me a bit of a hippie. It may sound a bit trite, but the reality is we're trying to do something decent and good with the world. And yeah, it's only a little sprinkling of goodness that we're bringing, but we're just happy to bring anything to it.
I think it is such an incredible offer for developers. And look, when you talk about it just being a small sprinkling, it's not, right? All it takes is one donation or one act of kindness to completely change the trajectory of somebody's life, right? And so the fact that you, Code Wizards, is willing to basically dedicate that much in resources, it speaks to not only the way you approach the companies that you work with, the customers that you work, the partners that you work with, but the way you just approach the world in general. This has been my experience in working with you all. It's just been an absolute joy and pleasure to work with you. And, again, this speaks volumes to the leadership of the company, the way you think about this industry, and the way you think about your place in the world at large. So, hats off to you all over there at Code Wizards for making the world a better place. I love that. Absolutely love
Thank
that.
you. It's very kind of you. I mean, we also try and do the same with the way that we work with staff as well. So, like most companies at the end of the pandemic, we had this conversation about return to work, which I know is a dirty phrase in some cases, but what we said to the senior engineers is, yeah, you're probably 95% as efficient as you were in the office by working at home. And I know you can pick your kids up and it's got quality of life advantages, but the reason why we're going to go hybrid is that the younger engineers will benefit massively. And as gnarly old engineers like myself, we learn by osmosis, by sitting next to somebody and asking stupid questions and just working it through with them, and them having the time and patience to just push us back to the right trajectory and get us thinking about it and essentially get better at our craft. And part of that pay it forwards is to the older engineers, which is we need you to come in. We need you to teach your skills to the next generation, because when we are long gone and we've left this industry, they'll be the people who are in there doing the next steps of this. We owe it to pay it forwards. And again, sorry, I know it's very hippie-ish, but it really comes through in the way that you do things and the way that people work with other people, because that karma and that feeling flows through on what it is that they're doing. I'm a huge believer in it.
Yeah. And look, again, finding that work-life balance is incredibly important. I've always said for any teams that I've led or been a part of, right, if you're not right at home, you can't be right here. So let's find that balance. But to your point, sometimes, right, being in the same place creates this, surprise, serendipitous sort of solution creation that happens when you're in the same space. And I can't tell you how many times I spent roaming the halls at Sun Microsystems back in the day and opening a door just to find a lab group working on a really awesome piece of tech that I had no idea what was going on, that led to conversations, that led to other innovation, right? So yes, it is about finding that balance, but it is also about being present. It is also about sharing your knowledge and sharing your gifts with each other. So everybody, right, learns from each other. Everybody builds a better future. I love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, I mean, we were lucky enough to go to the Crick Institute, which may not be well known in the US, but it's the largest cancer-dedicated research facility in Europe. It's a beautiful building in the middle of London. And one of the things that they've done there is that there are no individual labs, there are no individual areas where people working on a specific area are domiciled. They're all mixed in. And it's deliberately done in this massive, open, beautiful building, so that you get those moments of serendipity where somebody walks next door and just has a chat, which leads to a wow moment, and off you go on the next thing. And it's just like lovely to see this being used in quite a formal, traditional industry profession. So I think it's got a lot of value. And I think as older engineers, we really have to think about how we help the next generation be what they deserve to be.
Leaving the world a better place than when we got it, right? That's what it's about.
100%.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Stuart, I want to thank you for walking us through, again, the background of Code Wizards, the partners that you work for, the type of services you provide. If there were three big takeaways that you would want our viewers to know, what would they be?
So number one, it really is pay it forwards. We strongly believe in this as a mantra. It's part of our karma methodology. It's part of why our motto is don't be a dick. And that pay it forwards is how we work with the game, how we work internally, and how we make your game better just by being a part of it. Second thing is that we are the only global AWS dedicated game partner out there. We're based around the world. We've got locations in North America, APAC, and the UK. And we love the fact that we can work with games of any size, of any scale, in any location. And again, it's an amazing thing that we can do, and it's amazing for us as a business as well. And then the last thing really is just how we look at the world is slightly different to everybody else. We don't look at things as a statement of work. We know that your game will change. We know that things will evolve. We understand that we could be halfway through a feature and then we all realize that it's not the right feature for the meta game within your game and we need to change it. And that game-specific artistic media approach is a huge differentiator for us and how nimble we can be when we work with game teams to make the best game that they can possibly make. And also helps us retain staff because staff have much more fun. They work on more fun things. And just the way that we do it is what makes it special.
Wonderful. So the three, Code Wizards continues to pay it forward. They are the only truly global AWS game tech provider and partner, and their approach is very different. And make sure you go and lean into their karma offer around their magic methodology. Absolutely amazing. So I want to thank my guest, Stuart Muckley, the CEO of Code Wizards, for joining us here today on this episode of AWS Partner Profiles. Make sure you head on over to codewizards.io or send them an email to hello@codewizards.io to find out more information and find out how you can get started working with this exceptional team that can help you elevate your game development process, make sure that you can deliver that efficiently to the world, operate it correctly, and continue to build amazing, amazing games that you deliver across the planet. Stuart, thank you again so much for spending so much time with us today. We really appreciate you and the other wizards over at Code Wizards.